the opiate of the masses. Fuck that. Consumption.
Consumption
is the opiate of the masses. You look at the things that are paid. Entertainment. I don't need fucking entertainment when kids are starving.
No.
Right?
No, thank you.
You know?
Yeah, thank you.
I don't need it. And you look at the growth of entertainment. If you do literature, you'll see that the actor was hated for a long time in English society. The actor was hated. He wasn't treated like the Greeks treated him. He was hated because he had no purpose and he rendered a false reality. Right? So the Puritans hated it. They were out trying to get rid of them. But then when you move to an industrial model of labour, you got no time, dude. You're not going to go out and smell the roses. You're not going to plant. You've got no energy left. You've worked in a fucking dark satanic mill for 15 hours. You're living off moldy bread.
Yeah. You're not going to come out and philosophise.
Yeah, well, that's right. You've got no time to think because you're fucking exhausted and you're all dying because you're giving your money you're giving your bodies to this industrial process.
Yeah.
At the arse end of it, you just want to relax and do something else. Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And there it comes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then we just commodify the fuck out of ourselves and nothing is sacred anymore.
No, it's so true. It's so true. So can you see a future that doesn't involve the vast majority of it being involved with that one word, sustainability? Can you see a future happening in our lifetime, in the next 50 years, without us eventually coming to a consciousness level of going, well, we've got to stop growth until we get the sustainability problem?
Well, why do we even give a shit about growth?
I don't understand.
And thank you.
I said this thing the other day. If you did a referendum or something in the country and you go, well, guys, we can keep growing and you can work 5 or 6 days a week, or we can stop growing and you can work 2 or 3 days a week. What do you want to do?
What are we growing? Like, what is GDP? It's just shit flowing around. Like, more shit flows around. More shit flowed around after we had floods in fucking Queensland. That's not good. I don't want a flood that knocks people's lives apart. I don't want bushfires to burn shit down. Then there's more money in the economy, more shit's flowing around because we're fixing it. Why do you want that?
Yeah.
Well, you studied the economy and finance and all that, so can you explain to us the whole
Good luck. My brother's a PhD in finance.
Is it growth? Because it always comes down to a sinister level with me. Like you got these faceless men at the top, the 1% who are just going, well, we're going to maintain the status quo, and we want to do this because we want to be up here and we want to jet around the world and live.
You've got to go all the way back, and you've got to go. I think we build layer on layer on things that we think we know, and most of the things that we know are bullshit. Like there's a line in a Damian Marley song with Nas where he says, most people couldn't tell you why they know what they know or how they know it or whether it's true or not.
For sure.
And
especially with science, like I don't know anything really. I just rely on scientists to tell me the answer.
Well, that's a religion, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a religion.
And it's a religion. And
definitely.
That's all right for it to be a religion as long as it mocks itself.
Once it is self-reflective science.
It needs to.
Well, that is actually the one good thing about it. It does. It can correct itself if the
scientists do, right?
And it is
scientists do because
they
have a discipline which requires it. So this is post Popper. It's not pre Popper. It's not before Karl Popper. It's after Karl Popper, right? So before that, scientists was positivists. They just thought that what they were doing was right. And they do it that way, and it was you'd have those paradigm shifts when something changed, but it took a long time, and then whatever change of paradigm would be incorporated into the new paradigm, and we're building in layers. But Popper, I think, as I understand it, was the person to say that what we know in science is basically the limit of how far we can test the hypothesis now.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's right.
This is how this approximates our reality. It's just the limit. So this is just the conditional reality for now.
Up until, for the foreseeable future.
And that's a really humble position,
Yeah.
And that's a position that you hear that and you go, yep, dude.
It's always open to change.
It's always open to change. It can be changed.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, I suppose, definitely. So
go back a step.
Where were we going, actually?
We were going to the Enlightenment. That's where I was going to take you.
Yeah.
Right.
Please.
So, post-colonial studies does a lot of stuff, and also critical theory does a lot of stuff to look at how.
Could you explain post-colonial, just for?
Post-colonial studies is basically, the post in colonial is supposedly colonials looking at their own lives and taking time to represent themselves as opposed to being represented by the West or people narrating their lives and people having studied their cultures, repeating their cultures in a cardboard way, looking for an essence, right? But it's more than that. It's more than that. So it's also a perspective that looks at how much of power is embedded in language, and how much of power is embedded in knowledge, and how knowledge is created in order. Knowledge creation in itself is an act of power. And so how we define what a woman is, how we define what a person of colour is, how do we even define what a man is, are all acts of power. And that language is used in this way unconsciously, but that unconscious use of the language simply repeats that power dynamic. And until you start looking into the language and the way that those words arise, the way they're structured, and the things they rely on for their meaning. So, this idea of binary opposition, right, is this idea that white has no meaning without black.
Sure,
White is the absence of black. Right, so what's black? And there's this awesome, that awesome scene in Spike Lee's Malcolm X when he's looking up the words white and black and getting pure virginal, black, dark, evil. And he's looking at the fact that Negroes are called black. And then all of the associations just in the word that then are just painted onto a race of human beings, which, but for their pigmentation, which protects them from the sun.
Well, language is such an interesting thing. It can be so limiting in communication.
The Buddhists called it conditional reality.
Well, I mean, Jacques Fresco is a guy.
I don't know.
Please look it up. Venus Project is a. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of that.
Yeah, Venus Project. So it's just a complete sustainability movement. No sort of government. All we need to do is sort of understand what materials, resources we have, and work in a sustainable fashion. Growth and all that out the window. As long as we're not exploiting the planet and we're not exploiting other humans, equality, everyone lives on a similar level, and then, everyone can sort of have the option to work in their own project if they want to, you know what I mean? Like, just freedom. So, some might go, that sounds like utopia. Whatever.
What is utopia?
It's just a stupid word for people to cop out.
It's a cop out. It's something.
When it's used derogatively, it's a bunch of sheep braying to themselves because they're scared.
They don't want to go down that road. They don't want to go down that road of that thought pattern of.
It's easier being a sheep in a herd than it is to look from the top of the hill at the herd and where it's at, and so we could be somewhere better than this.
You're right.
And that's what I was getting at with like Australia, right? The labour movement was born here and it's now dead. Right?
It is. Right? It's just a word.
Yeah. Free medical insurance was pretty much born here under Medicare. Gough Whitlam gone. Look at the changes, structural changes that, conservatives can go fuck themselves, right? And you know why they can go fuck themselves? Because you're look at what the systemic changes, so your big macro changes are in your economy, and it's Labor governments that do it. So Paul Keating and Bob Hawke basically killed themselves with their own base. Right? The working man and woman, they killed themselves. They basically made themselves unelectable by restructuring the economy. Because it's a structural change, it doesn't come through in 2 years, it comes through in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, right? Deregulated shit, floated the currency, did all sorts of stuff, right? Changed tariffs, really opened up the economy to some big shocks, right? Who sits on his ass, does nothing? Costello, what did he do? Name one structural change that he went for.
I don't know much about Australian policy.
I just started getting into it.
So he should have done something. He had all the money. And now I'm so glad that the IMF has finally come out and said the most money ever wasted by a government was under Howard when we had all the money in the world.
Really?
Yeah. And that was coming off those structural changes. So when Rudd came in, there's not much you can do in terms of those big levers. They've all been done. So the only things that are really left to us are what, Scandinavians think about. And what Japanese people think about. But we're not Japanese or Scandinavian, right? So they think about, how do I make you the best human being you can possibly be? How do I make sure that I take off the table your health, your food, your need for shelter? How do I make sure that you're able to culture your consciousness and your intellect in a way that gives me something unique? Because that something unique is going to be valuable to other human beings.
That should be a fucking government. How is that so hard? Why is that seen as a socialist? thing, or
Well,
and why
you're
is that
socialist
bad?
because you're not working for capital.
But
Yeah,
why-
that's
why
right. That's right.
Yeah.
But why
You're
would-
working for the love
that's-
of life.
Yeah.
But that is the main issue that we can't come to terms with, is why would you want to work for anything other than your own pure motivation and enthusiasm for life? Why would you want to work for capital?
We come back
That
to
doesn't
this
make
consumption
sense.
factor
Well, you gotta eat, yeah.
of the TV and the advertising and the marketing devil that's out there, and there's just everyone just there's
But
a
you
dollar
also,
price and
you
everything.
need to eat.
Yeah, certainly.
to-
Well, that's what I
You
mean.
need to pay for services.
When the money you rely on the money for your survival, then
Yeah.
you do get stuck in that trap. But if the government are taking care of the
But
basics,
the government can't
then you
take
have
it.
the option.
The government, and this is a funny balance for me, right? Because I believe in like really free human action, which is entirely responsible. Let's take a karmic view of shit, right? If you're going to do it, you own it, and you may not own it now, but you're going to have to own it because this is a closed system, right?
Yeah.
And we like to think of this as an open system that our waste just goes somewhere else. The earth is a closed system, and your life is a closed system,
Yeah.
right? Whatever you do, even if you
gonna
don't
vibrate,
believe in
yes.
any sort of spiritual stuff, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you do, you vibrate because you're made of atoms, right?
Sure.
You carry your
Oh, yeah,
stresses,
definitely.
you carry the shit you've done, you
Yeah.
carry your guilt, you die with that shit. You wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror, who are you looking at? You. No one else to pretend to be anyone else. To.
Yeah.
If you can't talk to the man in the mirror and say, I respect who I am, I respect
That's right.
the choices I've made, I own the mistakes, I've learnt or maybe not learnt from those mistakes, but they're mine, you're not going anywhere in your
That's
life.
right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Accountability, I think, is the number one thing that people need to do.
Accountability.
Start towards a path.
Government
of life.
can't give it to us.
No.
Big systems can't give it to us.
No.
See? It requires people to be in a place where and taking compassionate view, they're actually able to do that.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
is hence
We-
why we call this podcast a connect, because what the system has created for us is this disconnect between I'm able to do this to the environment and not feel the repercussions because it's only figures on a page and it's only and that's disconnect is the fundamental reason of why the chase for this imaginary profit concept. This is.
Yeah. But I
That's
mean,
why we're
being
out.
accountable, I think, isn't even possible for every human being in a welfare state, because if you are given certain things to help you out, I think that being accountable isn't just doing things for yourself, it's having awareness of what is coming into your life, and it could be a simple thing of appreciating
I'll give you a
something.
story, right?
That's accountability, appreciation.
I've been out of work, I've never collected a cheque from the government, I've paid tax, so I'm net profit to this society, I'm net profit, right?
Yep.
The only things that I take out are the common things that we take out. So I'm asthmatic, so I get PBS. I'll go to the doctor, that's paid for. We had an education public system, that's paid for. So these are the things that balance out.
But I'm not talking about just having everything provided for you. Obviously, there's levels of it.
Yeah.
But anything that is given to you, you should always appreciate it, and that is a form of accountability.
But you've got to teach people to do that. And
Well, that's the thing, you do, and that's the
and we've
problem.
unlearned that. Where I was going with
Of
this is, my dad came here. He came to this country because he had a job. They promised him a job. He got here. He'd sold everything he owned. Got here. He didn't have a job. He is a lifetime Labor voter because under that Hawke government, he was given the dole when he got here. And he said he'd spent his last cent, and if it hadn't been for the dole, he couldn't have kept his kids, his wife, couldn't have kept a roof over his head, couldn't have paid his bills. But he hated being on it so much.
Of course.
He hated being on it so much that he walked into Footscray University, which is now VUT, walked in, said, I'm an engineer, I've worked all over the world, I've worked on projects from this to this, let me teach. And they took him like that.
Wow.
And so he just went in and lectured engineering at Footscray
Wow.
University
That's
for
amazing.
work, till he could get a job as a civil engineer.
Yeah, wow.
But I mean,
And
that's,
it's an attitude, because
But
you
it
came to a
is.
place where they gave you nothing.
But that's the difference that you're talking about. People who are aware, are self-aware and accountable, and they understand that whole concept and the benefits of being accountable, they... I believe what I was talking about. Sorry.
This is not the time, right?
Where do you reckon that comes from, Tess? Where do you reckon that comes from?
Being accountable.
It's a question I ask myself a lot, especially because I've worked in organisations.
I think it's a realisation that you come to, though.
No, I think it's taught to you by your product environment. It's taught to you by your parents or by people in your life when you're younger, and it might turn into some more of a subconscious thing later on. But initially, it's got to be taught at some point. It's like the analogy I use is like when I believe in possibly putting society in this utopian state where money is no longer an issue. It's just a byproduct, credit, whatever. But
it's a medium of exchange.
It's a medium of exchange, and it's not so relevant anymore. And then you walk into a shop.